everyone, my name is Siobhan Lyon and you're very welcome to our mind-blowing podcast, and this is episode number 23.
And we're talking about Martyr syndrome. Martyr syndrome is something that you all know about. You mightn't have called it Martyr syndrome. But it's something you could be the martyr in your family, in your community, even in your job. But if we explain more and more about what it is and where it comes from, I would say my mother was definitely a martyr.
Yeah.
And is she's still alive, but she isn't so much now because we're all grown up. But that person who maybe sacrifices themselves for the greater good.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to see that actually from a family perspective, because when the martyr comes home to their family, they're giving out about all the things they've done for somebody, and then that wasn't repaid to them. You know, it's an interesting mentality because they're very much attached to pain and suffering then as well. So, I mean, they want to have all the bad news and be able to tell about that.
Yeah.
And also they want to be such a big part of relieving somebody's suffering or their anxieties or their problems or issues. But at the same time, historically, they're quite happy to go around kind of talking about people behind their back then as well and saying, oh, it's done such a thing now and I said this and I did that. Martyr, you know?
Yeah. But I think the interesting thing when I was doing some research in this was a phrase I came across and said the martyr seeks out persecution,
yes, and suffering and
misery.
Yeah.
So it's not that it comes their way and they have to deal with it, but they actively are engineered to go to find this.
I would say that engineering started maybe in the religious realm, you know, where you're supposed to be the martyr. And
well, it is a fundamental feacher of a lot of religions, even Christianity.
Yeah, I definitely had a growing up in a Catholic home, very strict Catholic home here in Ireland.
Yeah.
There was no messing.
No messing, yes, there was a lot of martyrs.
So now I can't stop messing.
Yeah. But
a lot of that.
Religion is a lot to answer for in relation to martyrdom. But it's also, I suppose, in your family, like the mother figure typically could be the martyr in the family, especially if it was like the traditional Irish big family where you've got 8, 14, 18, 21 even in a family. So it's not all happy. So somebody has to bear the brunt of that. And usually it's the mother figure.
Yeah.
And I think maybe to kids growing up in that environment, probably, and you can correct me on this, more so females, think this is the way a mother's supposed to be and will go on to replicate that behavior then in their lives when they grow up.
You can, you mimic it definitely, unless you choose to change yourself. I mean, I think you're going to take on those roles, and some people will see that role and have a completely different experience of it. You know, I grew up in a big family, there's 10 of us, and I would say that we all see our parents in different ways. You know, or our experience of growing up in that home is all completely different.
Yeah.
You know, some people had the greatest respect for my parents and others of us didn't, and whatever, you know, it's interesting the way it is.
And I think there's always a payoff from being a martyr. You kind of go, well, what's the benefit of being a martyr? You just get all the crap and all the suffering. But I think branding yourself as somebody like that, you can be a victim, and people feel sympathy for a victim. So sympathy equates to love.
Oh, you're so good. You've done so much.
Yeah, you're great. Again, you're wonderful.
Yeah.
For you, it's given that love that maybe that they were out to seek in the first place, because I think all human beings, that's what they're seeking anyways.
Yeah, of course. I think it's unfortunate because where is love? Where does it come from? It comes from yourself, from your heart, from what you put out and give to others. I think people in relationships, you know, they get into a relationship to give love because they love somebody and they want to share their love with them, and then after a while they start to become disillusioned and you think, well, I'm not getting enough out of this person or this relationship, you know, they become resentful and all these things start to happen, you know. But I think the fundamentals of it is that we forget to give love. You forget to be your loving self.
Yeah. And I was just going to harp back to the religious element, something that occurred to me, especially in Catholicism, which I grew up in. There's this idea that you have to put up with your lot in life. You make this sacrifice. You put up with your suffering and your misery because you're going to get rewarded in the next life.
That's right. The more you suffer here.
Yes.
What is that?
It's power and it's control, because people who are telling you that are the ones that are suffering.
Yes,
they're the ones with the money and the power and the authority.
Yeah.
and super critical,
Mm.
and that to me was a lot about what Catholicism was when I was growing up.
It's interesting that you put money into that as well, because we did a
Yeah.
podcast recently on money and, you know, our negative beliefs around it. Now that priests are not wealthy anymore as such, do you think that took away their power, or do you think that's
I think
different
people
things?
have stopped just accepting what they're told to believe in,
Yeah.
because there's so many different contenders now for what it is that you can believe in. Before the internet, things were very limited. There was no such thing as digital books. Films were on terrestrial television, and you were very curtailed and very limited and very restricted.
Yeah, definitely.
And even your sense of community and your parochial view. And again, like mid-90s, the population of Ireland was pretty static or diminishing.
Yeah.
But then suddenly, when the Celtic Tiger, people started to come in, and
we were all loaded.
And there was different influences, different things came in.
Yeah.
Religions, beliefs, different kinds of people, and that kind of shook things up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think then with the internet and the people's availability, their ability to access information meant then that they didn't have to believe everything just what the priest was telling them on a Sunday.
Yeah, for sure.
And they kind of go, it's like they discover that there's a bigger world out there.
Yeah.
A much
develop a little bit of critical thinking. I think being able to be educated as well is a good thing. Kind of college does teach you to think critically about things, you know, and not just take everything at face value. But the martyr is one that just likes to take things at face value, I think, you know.
And the martyr, sometimes the martyr can have a belief that, you know, bad things always happen to me. It's never going to be my day. You know, this is it. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm always harping on about this. It's not an observation. Your subconscious mind is listening, and it takes it as an instruction, and it makes it so.
I think there was research done as well, though, Paul, that Eckhart Tolle talks about it in his book, you know, the pain body and the person who's addicted to the pain. So what you said in the very beginning was they seek out, you know, torment and bad news and all that kind of thing. And it's because they're addicted to the chemicals in the body that are produced with bad news. But also there's a kind of an insecurity thing to the person who's the martyr. And this is the bit where I do feel for them, because I think that, you know, they have not developed themselves enough intellectually, or they haven't seen outside of the world. So the minute some news comes in, they take that at face value instead of thinking critically about it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're getting this release of chemicals that they're addicted to and that they want to feel the pain and suffering and all of that kind of thing. So they just keep going on the same road. And it's basically, I think, I would say it's connected to their own insecurities, like having to be in the know, having to know what's happening in the neighbour's house down the road. Or, you know, there's somehow that they're the one that knows everything or knows more than anybody else, based on this first-hand news that they've gotten their hands on, or that they've been just the first person in to help that family now when such a thing happened. Yeah. You know, I think it's like, I do feel for them, people who are stuck in that as well. Because it's not an easy thing to get out of, I think.
No, when people... you talk about security there, and I think sometimes your sense of identity gives you a security, regardless of whether that identity is positive or negative. It gives you your role. It's like your job description. So I am the martyr. I am the victim. And in that, there is a sense of security. This is my role. This is what I do.
This is how I get what I need.
Yeah.
You know.
And when people worry, and you know, you kind of go, well, why would they want to have all this negativity? Why would they kind of brand it with negativity and attract it and seek it out? When we were anxious and when we worry even about being anxious, we create cortisol is released. It's like it's a chemical. In the same way as you get like serotonin or dopamine, you become addicted to that chemical and that release, and that becomes a distraction from what it is that you're anxious about. So it becomes like a coping strategy to be worried about the anxiety, or be anxious about the worry, whichever way you want to put it.
Or the news you just received.
And it becomes their fix, and then they get into this loop of this is the way that I am. And if every day they expect and they get what they're going to expect every day, it gives them a sense of safety. That there's no unknowns. It's a peculiar thing, but it does actually work. So this is why many people, while they complain about the lot and it's terrible, I have to do this, and sometimes when they get the opportunity to change it, they won't change it.
No, they don't want to change. Yeah,
You
definitely.
know, isn't it a form of masochism?
Can be, I suppose. Yeah.
There is that. I had a friend one time, and she said to me, she used to be counseling people in relationships, and she said within every relationship, she said there's not only is there a male female dynamic, whether they're same sex or different sex, but she said there's also this the masochistic and sadist. In every relationship as well, the dominant or the submissive.
Yeah.
She said that's there's always at play, and I go, oh right, okay, so maybe the masochism, the person who wants the pain and the misery, that they get off on it to some degree.
Yeah.
And they don't want to change it, and they don't want to know how to change it.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, because, you know, some people enjoy the pain and the suffering, and that can be on a physical level, emotional level, or mental. So I think, yeah, there's definitely people out there. I've met loads of people, and I know loads of people today that are, you know, prefer that way of life, you know, and listen to the news from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, you know, and just are, you know, really entrenched in that way of being.
Yeah. I knew a woman one time, and she was very religious.
Yeah.
But she was telling me that when she lived in England, that they, herself and her husband, they used to take in people who were homeless and feed them and all that sort of thing. That's nice, and they should give them money, and we'd leave ourselves short and whatever. And
Yeah,
they did a lot of misery in their lives and were very poor, whatever. But she believed that this is the way she was supposed to be, and this is the way that God wanted her to be, and it was this suffering. And it's not necessarily got to do with God, but she had decided this is the way, and kind of go, it's gone anyway. So it certainly wouldn't be the way for me, but I think such people too, you mentioned love and people seeking love. This is like, when you do things for your fellow mankind, it's an expression of love.
Yeah.
And I think love given, there is an expectation that hopefully it'll come back. It's the karma thing, that it'll come back, and if it doesn't come back now, it might come back next week, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, just keep going.
In the anticipation that you get that love. That love can come back, not as somebody running up and say I love you. It can be an appreciation, thank you, and they kind of feel valued, and then they feel justified in continuing this behavior. So I think a lot of this goes back to conditioning growing up, to that if you were deprived of love, if you were made to suffer hardship, that you identify this as being you early on. Yeah. And then you create more of that as you go through your teenage years, your 20s, and into adulthood. Yeah. Itself.
Unless something happens and you decide to change it, you know. I think that's what happened to me, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, woe is me in my teens. I've been abused, you know, I've had all these horrific things happen to me, and, you know, I was just drinking and going crazy and stuff like that. And, you know, but then something major happened, and I just stopped everything. And I was like, oh God, I have to change my life. You know, it was like a scream came from my soul nearly, that I changed my life.
But up until that, Siobhan, then you wouldn't have been surprised if crap stuff happened or turned up in your life.
Constantly.
You kind of go, this is more of it. You'd be saying, this is what I'm used to. I
expected it, and that's what I got.
Yeah.
But then, I'm not saying anybody expects to be abused. You know, obviously nobody wants that in their life, but, you know, if you're not looking after yourself, I wasn't looking after myself either in that time. You know, I was, you know, very lost. I think, you know, I didn't really know where I was going in my life at that point. So, I think it's amazing how when you seek change will come. You know, as well. And I think that's a nice point in the middle of it all.
It is. And like when I was thinking about this and doing some research on it, I was thinking it's a very feminine thing. And then I realized, actually, hold on, in the military, you know, like the Marines, their motto was never leave a man behind.
Yeah.
You kind of like sacrifice yourself for the benefit of the battalion, or your group. There's this loyalty thing.
Hero's badge, or whatever.
Yeah. So it's definitely there in the male psyche as well. It's probably just expressed in a slightly different way.
Yeah, it's attached more to the hero thing rather than anything else. I mean, men in their families years ago as well were expected to provide. You provide for your family. That's an honourable thing to do, you know. So you're going out like a martyr, working every day and bringing home the bacon, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
literally the bacon. If you were my father, he was a butcher.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Worked in a factory.
Savage.
Sometimes would literally bring home the bacon.
My dad was a grease monkey.
A grease monkey.
He's a mechanic. He had his own little garage.
I thought you would say he brought home monkeys.
He brought home monkeys to me. He had a monkey. I was his monkey.
You were his monkey. He trained you well.
He fucking did, yes.
But
Lula.
there are ways and means of breaking out of this cycle. If you are a martyr, if you know somebody in your life who is a martyr and fits this description of what we've been talking about, maybe the worst thing you can do is approach them and say, you're a martyr, I can help you. You can go, no, how dare you? How dare you take my misery away from me? How dare you?
They're probably quite happy the way they are.
They are. You're taking their identity, you're taking their soul away from them.
Yeah.
So observe it, watch it, but then at some point, if the person does decide to break out of it, you're there for them, and you can begin to point them in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of places to help nowadays. You know, I mean, therapy is a lot more sought after than it used to be years ago, isn't it?
You see, isn't it interesting? And you know, therapy. We're talking about Ireland, right? Therapy in Ireland, you went to. There's something wrong with that person. They're not well. They're nervous, or at them.
Their nerves
they're bad with the nerves.
They're after getting out of the home for the wintered.
That shower, they're always bad with their nerves.
Yeah.
Whereas in places like the United States, it was seen as a status symbol if you had a therapist.
Oh yeah, everybody had a therapist. Sure.
Yeah.
You know, all the famous actors coming out saying,
you were assigned a therapist.
I've been working with my therapist, and it's a real thing. I know.
It has changed in Ireland over recent years, when now people, you know, mental health has been seen. There was a campaign over the last couple of years where kind of comparing mental health to physical health. So if somebody in work had a broken leg, you wouldn't be kind of going, oh God, there's something wrong with you. I'm not association with you. And in the same way, if somebody in work has depression or anxiety, now you kind of go, I don't have to keep away from you. It's not as if
people aren't scared of it anymore. I mean, that legislation only changed in 2005.
Really?
Mental health into the Safety at Work Act. Yeah, that's like Jesus. Yeah, that's like 2005.
Because I think if
late in the game,
most of us are honest, like it's because of our own. You know, you're going to encounter mental health issues. You're bound to.
Oh, yeah.
I compare it to a car. So if I'm driving a car and it has mechanical issues, you bring it together. But sometimes because cars are computerized now and so much of that stuff, sometimes that's like the mental thing. You still bring it into the car, into the garage. You wouldn't be embarrassed and say like, something wrong with the dashboard. you fix that thing
blinking
for me.
At me.
Yeah, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's going dark. So you bring it to somebody and you get it fixed.
Yeah.
And it's the same with your mind. I mean, if you go to the doctor when you've got a broken leg and there's no sense of it, if you go to a therapist when there's something in your head that you need to sort out, it's kind of, there's no stigma attached to you. You kind of go, I haven't been able to figure this out myself. You're an expert in this area. What can we do to get this resolved?
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It is. That's kind of a bit of my goal for our podcast as well. It's just to normalize mental health and you know, normalize the issues for people, because I don't think anybody in this world has not been touched by mental health in some way. You know, some
if you've never been anxious, you've never been alive.
Yeah,
like anxiety and excitement are two halves of the same.
Yes,
two sides of the same coin.
That's how I got over my anxiety. You say, I'm excited.
Yeah, excited about something.
Yeah, because it's the same thing. Like
absolutely the same thing.
Yeah,
absolutely the same thing.
It's just changing how you think about it. But
anyway,
we are at the end.
We are at the end. I'm excited about going to get something to eat. I'm hungry. I'm starving.
For a bit of grub, lads.
Yeah. Follow us on Mind Blowing on YouTube, and you'll see the podcast around as well. Like us, share us, love us,
subscribe,
embrace us, hug us.
Yeah, give us little subscriptions there, lads.
Yeah,
helps keep going.
Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for listening.